Hi there. This is my reaction review breakdown analysis thing for House of the Dragon Season 2 Episode 6, Smallfolk. I'm sorry I'm getting this out so late. I'm recording it Saturday afternoon. I'm still recovering from a cold, as you can hear from my voice, so bear with me. Now, the way I go about this is I try to focus on the top 7 most notable things about an episode. Because 7 is a good number. Top 7, either good or bad. And sometimes I split things off for focus, so I'll tell you right at the start, point 7 is Rhaenyra and Mysaria. The Rhaenyra and Mysaria stuff leading up to their kissing scene, that this overshadowed the post-episode interviews so much that I'm splitting that off into its own video because I want to actually talk about the rest of the episode. But yeah, I'm annoyed at just how much they focused on that, and it didn't ruin the episode or the season, it's just it needed more build-up, so I have complex views on that. I softened on it over the course of the week. That's why I waited for interviews. They said it was actually something Emma Darcy came up with, and how they modified that and the backlash to things, so it's just, okay, that's on its own. That's point 7. Please focus discussion on that on the other video. That's the whole point. Rest of this, 6 other points I want to get through. First off, this did move at a better pace than last episode, and I don't want to knock on episode 5 or 6 as mid-season episodes, and the entire point was this pause while they're recovering from the Battle of Rook's Rest, and both sides going, well, what do we do now? And they're sort of mirror images of each other, because the last episode was a lot more focused on Team Black. This episode is a lot more focused on Team Green, that they're paired like that. But I like them both. This one, it's weird that sometimes I count cinematography as one of the 7 points. This time I didn't, because it didn't really stand out that much to me. That the new director we have this episode is Andrei Perec from Succession, and he did what it needed to do, and it was nice. It wasn't, these performances, these faces, but it didn't stand out to me as much as my favorite director is probably Claire Kilner, and all she's done with that. There's still good points in it, and you notice that, wow, the camera keeps spinning so much. He wasn't even hiding that. He said right at the beginning of the behind-the-scenes video, notice how I have the camera spinning around the small council table. He said he did that to show, the slow passage of time as the war is grinding on, to build tension. And that's a way to do it. It is keeping the camera moving instead of being static. It's just, we got a Succession director, and it kind of felt like an episode of Succession, camera work-wise. But in terms of executing the episode, he was great. Like, a riot scene is hard to do. So I wouldn't oppose Andrei Perec coming back. It's just, nothing really wowed me the way Kilner did. So, whatever, it was fine, it's just with that. Now, the other thing is, we knew the directors for the season going in. This is all just preamble, by the way, not one of the points. Turns out this episode was written by Eileen Shim, who previously wrote episode 8 of season 1, Lord of the Tides, generally considered the best episode, where Viserys comes to the trial to defend Rhaenyra, and then they have their last supper and everything. Great to have her back. I hope they make her a staff writer, because she's been consistently good, and people were excited. I was surprised when we found out from advanced screenings within hours of it premiering that, oh, it's Eileen Shim is back, because they didn't tell us the writers for this season in advance. So at the end of the season, I'll do a breakdown of that. Some people we knew weren't coming back, like Ira Parker went to do Dunk and Egg, Charmaine Degraté went to do Star Wars stuff. That's good for her. So, writer-director-wise, that's fine with that. Episode 5, I was still appreciating Claire Kilner directed that, so the camera work was my favorite stuff. This one, the pace was better in this, but 5 and 6, they're like mirror images of each other in terms of there's Team Black, then Team Green, and they're decent. I mean, guys, they're mid-season episodes. I've seen too many people, there's been a lot of discourse about yelling about the middle of the season. I talk about that a bit more in the separate video I made for point 7 about how the Rhaenyra Mysaria scene was a bit fast. It was fast, clunky, that they just shoved it in. They needed more setup scenes. So I'm talking more about, is there a mid-season slump? Well, there kind of is for any TV season. And in terms of pacing, I don't mind a slow scene that's written well. Like, I've loved the Harrenhal stuff, so that's subjective, but people are annoyed that why isn't there a dragon battle? Whatever, but I think this is all just hindsight bias, that people will drop all these complaints and things once episodes 7 and 8 air, which episode 7 has the sowing of the dragon seeds. Oh, that aired early at Comic-Con, and reports are coming out from that yes, Ryan Condal confirmed the sowing of the dragon seeds in episode 7 is the other big giant sequence of the season, because originally he said there were two, Rook's Rest and another one. It's this, so no Battle of the Gullet this season. I didn't want there to be, because that would be rushing it. So they're developing all that. So I already said point 7 is Rhaenyra Mysaria. What were the other 6 through lines here? Well, like I said, this one, where the last one focused on Team Blackmore, this focused more on Team Green, and that covers points 1 and 2. Point 1. This was Alicent's episode. That just as last episode I said this was officially Baela's episode, she had so many standout scenes in it. Baela wasn't even in this one, compared with Alicent, wasn't in the last one a lot. This was so many great Alicent scenes. And not just in terms of acting, which were good, but in terms of plot development, characterization, things I was waiting for. That one of the best scenes in this episode, not just that I wanted it, but was also very well executed, was when Alicent talks to her brother Gwaine about Daeron. How she wishes Gwaine hadn't been raised in Old Town because she doesn't know him very well, she hasn't seen him in years. Gwaine, specifically her brother. This exact sequence was on my list of things this season absolutely needed to do. That we never really got a character scene between Alicent and her brother. That I said, you've introduced Gwaine by episode 2, okay, when are they going to have a real heart-to-heart between Alicent and her brother we've never had before? It came in this episode. When are we going to have, we assume that, because Gwaine just came from Old Town, him talking about what's Daeron like in detail, came in this episode. That compare this to episode 5, where I said I had a specific checklist of things they haven't gotten to yet that this episode delivered on. That's why I'm not dumping on episode 5. That up to episode 5, I said up to this point, the first 4 episodes, the Velaryons didn't have a lot to do. They were used very little. And I understand that the A-plots were Blood and Cheese and Rook's Rest, that they wouldn't be the A-plot, but I said, even at the end of episode 4, if episode 5 doesn't have Velaryon scenes shifting into focus, it'll be a problem. And it delivered on that. That's why I actually liked episode 5 a lot. Stuff for Baela, Jace, Rhaena finally got a separate storyline, Corlys stuff with Baela. Delivered on all of that. Again, mirror image of that, we finally got the Alicent scenes we were waiting for. Real heavy development with her family, with her brother Gwaine, and talking about Daeron. And very well done. Not just that they did them, but that they were well done. Sorry, my voice is so scratchy, but I have to get this out. And that was really good. Just the look at her eyes and the acting when he just says, Daeron is kind. Because that's what she's worried about, and it just raises the central issue with Daeron of, was it because he wasn't in King's Landing, or because it wasn't because Alicent raised him? She was a child bride, it isn't her fault, of just how they turned out. And people wondering, why are we, up to this point, non-book readers are wondering, why are we so hyped about Daeron? And I think they explained it pretty well in this episode. He's the good one. Kind of because he was raised away from the Viper's Nest in King's Landing, that he's this courteous, honorable, courageous, chivalrous, kind person who they are not. And he's sort of her redemption, that he's actually a good person, that some good came from her. And she knows it, that it's not that, she's Cersei, where Cersei's children could be good in spite of her, the younger ones, like Tommen and Myrcella, that she knows it's Daeron. So, perfectly played. I love that, it's her having self-doubt. I make fun of things, but, that Alicent's really a tragic figure. Everything we needed from Alicent they gave in this episode. That was the big one. There were other ones. interspersed throughout this, which leads me into point 2, because they overlap. Point 1 is this is Alicent's episode. Point 2 is this was the Greens episode in general with, the way I wrote in my notes is Green Small Council. The Green Council members were also really good, and in their interactions with Alicent. There's Orwyle, who had a lot of scenes with Alicent, but also Larys and Aegon. That was a real highlight when he's going over what it'll be like to be disabled in their medieval world. Tom Glencarney's performance is great, even though it's very limited. Just showing that he's regained consciousness of just how much pain he's in. That Larry scene, first off, with Aemond, when he realizes he can't be manipulated, that was a great, just the Green Council scenes are always a highlight. And just realizing Aemond can't be manipulated, he's talking at them, not with them, so he's just ordering them, he's not taking instructions. And, sorry I'm jumping over here, thinking about Larys and Aegon, I don't think that when he even has a tear rolling down his cheek when he's pausing mid-sentence that people will stare at you and look away, and I don't think that was meant to be fake. I mean, I know they're actors, but I mean, I don't think Larys was being fake when he's describing what it's like to be disabled in this intolerant medieval culture. I mean, he's twisting it to his own purposes, but I think that he's basing that on truth, that's kind of why they're explaining he's such a misanthrope. That there were deleted scenes in Season 1 at the Royal Hunt where one of the Lannisters mocks him, minor Lannister cousin mocks him, and Harwin rises up to his defense, but that insults him even more, that how dare you defend me, that it makes him feel useless. So that got deleted for time, it really shouldn't have been, but of building up that Larys isn't Littlefinger, that there's different reasons that he is the way he is. And Matthew Needham is a great actor, that he's found the humanity in him, that he's this guy, killed his father and brother, but he's not a mustache-twirling villain, or... I have this whole other video about this, that he explained that he isn't playing the character creepy on purpose, that he's trying to be nice in scenes, it just comes off as creepy, but he did it the opposite of what they did with Littlefinger, where he's trying to... They wanted the actor to try to sound creepy. It was a terrible choice. So, Larys was great in this. Him and Aegon, that was one of the standout scenes. All of the planning stuff with that. Before I get into the council in general, character-wise, like I've said before, I'm really happy they turned Orwyle into a notable character this year. Because there's some, like the Black Council, there's characters who just fade into the background on Rhaenyra's council. Orwyle, they really stepped up with his writing, that he's the doctor who earnestly is focused on his job and allegedly sworn to political neutrality, so the other Greens don't entirely trust him. I saw a mashup of multiple reaction channels. I like watching reaction channels. This mashup of multiple ones recently for episode 2, and the point when Aegon goes, "Any one of you might have helped them, for all we know," and he shoots a suspicious look at Orwyle, and like more than one person said, "Oh, why are they doing that? Because he's black?" And no, it's because the Grand Maester is the only member of the council the king doesn't appoint. He's a neutral representative sent by the Archmaesters from the Citadel. But, Orwyle has served them for years, he's supportive of Alicent's, there's just this little, can we trust this guy who's allegedly neutral? Because that's the way they play that, but again, the internal factions and bickering are always fun, that now we have Larys on Aegon's side, Orwyle is actually on Alicent's side, even though she's been kicked off the council, though. Again, thinking of Daeron, I love that little beat where Orwyle explains there's no letters from Daeron recently because, well, yes, there is war in the Reach now, because House Beesbury is harassing the Hightower army. And they're just doing this in dialogue, they don't have time to show it, I hope they do in Season 3, but we feared they cut the Reach plot entirely, and now we have Daeron, and we have exposition of, yes, there are other houses in the Reach that don't like the Hightowers, like the Beesburys, or presumably next episode or soon enough, they'll mention the Caswells are also annoyed you killed their lord. But with the way he says Lord Beesbury's demise, that they were both literally in the room when Kristen killed him. So Orwell built up as a sympathetic character. He's a separate doctor. I'm happy they built him up. By the way, I'm treating the Golden Tooth scene that the episode started with as just an extension of the Green Council plot, because it was one scene leading right into a council scene where they talk about it directly. Not that I'm complaining, it was a great scene of actually showing, oh look, the Lannister army has finally come from Casterly Rock to Golden Tooth, and now they're planning their next move, and it was a nice visual. I like how their armor design looks like this is prequel Lannister armor, that it looks like an earlier version of what they had later in terms of the helmet design and stuff. And of course they have literally the same armorer, Simon Brindle. I hope that he didn't, I was surprised he didn't talk about this in behind the scenes videos. I hope he will soon, because he's talked in other ones. But that was nice, showing the army there. Green Council scenes have been the highlight of the season every time we saw them. And with all of that, and I like that they're trying to... I like that they explain clearly in dialogue, because it's hard for TV-only viewers. Oh, look, we are going... what our grand strategy is we're trying to attack on two fronts. Attack the Riverlands from two fronts. The Lannisters from the west, our forces in King's Landing from the east, trying to get them in a pincers movement. And they do include counter-arguments like Kristen urging, well, we should wait for the Hightower army. There's bickering like this in the books of, this is what, like, the Song of Ice and Fire novels are about, people debating strategy and counter-strategy. And, well, now they really can't wait for the Hightowers because they're being slowed down by these other houses like Beesbury and Caswell harassing attacks. My one complaint in the way this was, well, I guess the way it was filmed is... they needed to have someone actually pointing at a map while they said, oh look, we are attacking from the east while the Lannisters attack from the west. But season's not over yet, that my hope is that they will have someone at some point clearly and slowly, for the benefit of TV-only viewers, pointing at a map showing this is where everything's moving. The upsetting thing is, like, I love the painted table set on Dragonstone, but they don't film it well enough to clearly show... it doesn't do the job of a map of clearly showing this army is here, but this one is over here. And they've explained it's because, well, a top-down shot is more difficult. That's why the big board, as I call it, in the Green Council, they made a vertical map, like a World War II map, so people can walk up and point at it and still be in camera frame, and it's easier to point things out. So I actually think it would have made more sense for the Green Council to have a thing going, we are in the west, they are in the east. Maybe that'll come next episode, I don't know. But I'm thinking of like Lord of the Rings, when they added a scene of Faramir and his lieutenant slowly, clearly saying, pointing at a map, Isengard is attacking from the west. Mordor is in the east, and they're pointing at it just to show people in the movie, get a sense of spatially this is what's happening. But even though they didn't have a shot of the map with it, I still felt that they clearly explained in the dialogue, we are hitting them on two fronts, that's his plan. So look, this is what we are doing. And really the Green Council is a lot better in comparison to the Black Council, just because there's bigger characters in it. I mean, the Black Council has lacked all of this, whereas the Green Council were the highlights of every episode they were in. The Black Council was something we mostly had to sit through. Not every time, and I'm exaggerating a bit, but Rhaenyra's council scenes were good when Daemon or Rhaenys were there. So, like, through episode 4, they were still pretty good. And it was, I guess, the point that they are bickering minor lords who kind of look down on Rhaenyra. And I actually like Lord Celtigar. It's just, oh, I'm the fastidious treasurer guy. It's just he's no Tywin. But Lord Massey is not really established as a character. Minor spoilers, he dies in the books soon, in the sewing, and I don't think anyone will miss him. Laurent Marbrand is a good Kingsguard, I mean, when he rushed in to save her from the Cargill twin duel, but Laurent Marbrand should be talking more as their military commander. And instead they have Alfred Broom talking over everyone. and he's supposed to be annoying and talking over everyone. Thankfully, they just got rid of him. But it wasn't adding anything. It's when a character's supposed to be annoying, so fair enough. Also, Maester Gerardus isn't. It should be talking more. There should be more back and forth dialogue. Gerardus even mostly agrees with Rhaenyra. I mean, he's not as interesting as Orwyle, but there should be something there. So they need a better character balance. But really, I said they were good through episode 4, so it's really just the past 2 episodes those scenes have been really grating. And maybe Rhaenyra slapping Celtigar was supposed to signal, okay, this is going to be a shift in that. One can only hope. But Broom is gone. The thing is, they needed to get Corlys on the council scenes sooner instead of later. I mean, notice how much the Black Council scenes really improved, like when he came to episode 4 just as a lord, not a council member. That was something we were really missing, the back and forth and talking about strategy. And that was a shortcoming of this episode. He should have said something at the council in episode 6 instead of just, yup, I'm here. And I know they're setting it up, but looking forward to that. So, another thing is Mysaria is like this shadow counselor in the library, which I guess a spy master would be, instead of, I guess she thought Broom would just keep arguing with her, that she was like hovering on the staircase at times. But point is, moving ahead in the future, we need Corlys and Mysaria actually sitting at the Black Council table because they're interesting characters who are on her council, when up to now the Black Council has been kind of boring, when the Green Council is all the really exciting scenes we look forward to. Which I guess sort of overlaps with or leads into point 3 out of 7 here, which I try to find the through line, and the way I label it is the Velaryons/Dragon Seeds subplot. Because I realize the through line is Sea Smoke and the Dragon Seeds. That it's not the Rhaenyra plotline to me, but I'm back and forth on this because then I realized how unfair it was. That when Rhaenyra is part of a larger storyline with someone else, or Alicent is part of the Green Council, then it branches off. And then I said, wow, if you don't count the Dragon Seed stuff with Sea Smoke, or with plotting rebellion with the Smallfolk, Rhaenyra had a pretty light episode with the Mysaria stuff, which was problematic. But I can't discount that Rhaenyra was in those. That is still part of Rhaenyra's story, that they're plotting to make an uprising with the Smallfolk, and actually a pretty decent but short council scene explaining, oh, we're going to try to get Steffon Darklyn to claim a dragon because he has some Targaryen blood in him. Okay, so, but still, in terms of trying to break it down to 7 points, it ultimately was more about the Velaryons than it was about her, but she's still in it and still good in it. So, I'm splitting hairs here. Rhaenyra's better when she's playing off other major characters, like a Rhaenyra Baela scene is good, a Rhaenyra Jace scene is good. We need her interacting with Corlys more. But I do say in my notes that this is what they're focused on. First off, before I get to the other character, Adam and Alan, the failed attempt with Steffon Darklyn, I liked this interaction. I liked how it was played. It was really a one-on-one between him and Rhaenyra. Good acting from both. And she does warn him, you could die in the attempt, that she's not sending a man to his death unwittingly. Yet she warns him it's perilous. And he's a true knight. He says, I knew that was part of my oath when I joined the King's Guard, to risk my life. So that was great. Side note here, because there's been some discussion about this, the book actually does say Steffon Darklyn tried to bond with Sea Smoke. They didn't invent that. Rather, what the TV show did is they tried to invent some sort of explanation for why they thought he'd have any kind of chance, because the book doesn't mention, it's an outline, doesn't mention, did he think he had some Targaryen blood in him or something, and it turns out he did. The explanation they came up with, which I thought was a good explanation, was, well, we went through our genealogical records, and something like your grandmother's great-grandmother or something, like an aunt of Aegon the Conqueror, who the histories don't really talk about because she was a younger daughter or whatever, was a Targaryen. That works for me. And this led to debate within book fans themselves on the forums and stuff, like Elio and Linda didn't really like it on Westeros.org, but then others, mainstay, older people on the forums were going, no, this makes sense. They're referring to something that The counter-argument developed within the book fans, which I agreed with, that this might be a nod to something else in Fire and Blood. That, you see, when we were waiting for Fire and Blood to come out, we kept hoping it would give more info on the pre-conquest Targaryens on Dragonstone after the Doom, when they were waiting out the Century of Blood, tearing apart Essos for this whole 100 years. They were waiting it out by hiding in their island Doomsday bunker, and weren't that involved in Westeros. We really got nothing except for exactly one tiny new shred of info, that this added line about the Great Council of 101 at Harrenhal, like we saw in the first episode, that there's this one line that one of the 14 claimants was a man who had parchments proving he was a descendant, albeit 9 generations removed, of a younger daughter of Daenys the Dreamer, this younger daughter who, quote, wed a petty lord, married a petty lord. Literally the only new info we got, but hey, it was a new thing for the family tree stuff we make. And I'll make a separate lore video about this in more detail, I'm just rushing it off here, but yes, the book does imply that the family tree included a couple of younger minor daughters who aren't officially listed because they weren't very important. I mean, consider, of the 7 generations who lived on Dragonstone, we don't know who the wives of the 4th and 5th generations were. That we don't know. It doesn't even list, doesn't mention who Aegon the Conqueror's paternal grandmother was. There's like 3, maybe 4 spots in there where they should at least mention, and this is who this mother was that Martin didn't really go over. So yeah, with that added thing about Daenys the Dreamer did have a younger daughter, it's just not really mentioned that much because they weren't important. There could have been younger daughters that were glossed over who married local lords around Blackwater Bay. So I thought that fit really well, and it was them. This happens in the book. Steffan tries to claim a dragon, and they were trying to explain, well, why would he think he had a chance? As for Steffan's performance, that he died, it rejected him. Well, contrast this with how Jace said that it must be Dragon Lord propaganda that you need to be a pure-blooded Valyrian to bond with a dragon. So pure-blooded that we need to keep the bloodline pure by marrying brother to sister with compound incest. He said, well, that must be, propaganda. Well, it turns out, while it's a bit overstated, exaggerated, it still matters. Martin has been very clear. There's magical power in bloodlines. So if you're something like 1/64th Valyrian through your grandmother's great-grandmother or something, it's thinned out too much. But on the other hand, you don't need to be this purebred, thoroughbred result of brother-sister incest, that even being half Valyrian, or I think as long as like one of your 4 grandparents was a Valyrian, has some Valyrian blood in them, you're good to go. That you can have a shot. That dragons are fickle. Sometimes they'll take someone who just has one Valyrian grandparent. Other times, like, they rejected Rhaena. That they were sometimes, like, Meleys didn't want Daemon, Caraxes did. And Daemon's daughter Rhaena, a great-granddaughter of King Jacaerys herself, who has Valyrian blood on both sides, because she's also from Rhaenys, it didn't like. So it can be hit or miss. Dragons are fickle. And you'll see in the Sowing of the Dragon Seeds tomorrow night, that in episode 7, that sometimes people who had one Valyrian parent or something, who are clearly dragon seeds, who look Valyrian, it can be hit or miss. So I was fine with all of this. One thing I haven't seen others reporting on, though, which I will mention here, and I'm going to highlight in another video. When they get burned, you saw how that Dragon Keeper slit his own throat to end his suffering quickly when he was on fire? Months ago, like a full year ago, Ryan Condal was on his Movie Props podcast, and he talked extensively about how House of the Dragon Season 1, particularly how he came up with the idea of the TV version of the Dragon Keepers, who are different from the books. I actually think they're a better idea, and that they're like this monastic order that worships the dragons and tends to them. But at the same time, when he was describing their gear and, like, why do they have those sticks and stuff, that people, oh, the dragon's supposed to be scared of a stick. That's like a real-life thing they use in Mongolia to herd large animals. The sound it makes, because it's got seeds inside. He explains all this, I'll go over this. But there's one specific detail that he mentioned, but wouldn't go in yet because it was spoilers, he said. He said, notice that each of them has a dragonglass dagger on their belt. I won't say what it's for, but you'll see in Season 2. And we discussed this, and all of us who were talking about this, going over the thing on Twitter and the forums, thought, oh, this must be something to do with the magic ceremony for hatching a dragon egg, or that they do, or like cutting an egg open or into the egg sac or something like Daemon did with a chisel. No one thought it was for this. That it turns out, officially, he hinted at this a year ago, and you'll see, no one guessed. It turns out they all have these daggers for this specific contingency. They're suicide daggers. It's like a suicide pill. In case you get totally engulfed in dragon flames, so you can slit your own throat really quickly. I guess because, like, dragon glass, obsidian, volcanic rock, because it's really sharp and I presume wouldn't melt as fast as steel would, so you can rely on it to keep a sharp edge even if you're engulfed in fire. Was not expecting that at all, and because I've been hyped up on what are the daggers for a year, I was laughing so hard at that scene, I had to pause the episode for 2 minutes to collect myself a full 2 minutes. That's what the daggers are for. They paid off on that. Oh, that was great. But the through line here again of sea smoke and the search for the dragon seeds. Now we get to the Hull brothers, Adam and Alan of Hull, back on Driftmark. They weren't in the last episode. The Bela wasn't in this episode. They weren't in the last one. So, nice to see them back. Their scenes have been short, but consistently good. Because they're just setup scenes. And here we finally see the payoff that, like, I guess for TV-only viewers, we're starting to realize, like, Episode 4, when Rhaenys pretty much did spell out he's his bastard son. You realized Alan is important. But now you're seeing why they're really important. Adam claims a dragon. So, yes, as just their dialogue scene was good, and real emotional, real characterizations of what it's like. Well, we know that they know they're bastards. That's another thing. That yes, as many have suspected independently of each other, but I'm on record for this. So it's like History of Westeros podcast, and a couple of others who are celebrating. Yes, Alan officially isn't bald. He shaves his head to hide his silver hair, so people won't think he's getting privilege because he's Corlys's bastard son, like the way Egg from Duncan Egg shaves his head so people doesn't know he's Valyrian. I wonder how much he'll explain in coming episodes, but like I said, they made it clear in this one. I was confused up to this point, and the books aren't clear. Alan and Adam know that they are Corlys's sons. That changes a bit of the dynamic in this. That they know they're his bastards. They know they've grown up in the shadow of High Tide and Driftmark and all that. And, how do you feel about that? And things like that Jon Snow went through. So, and I said, Adam is loosely the Jon Snow of this prequel era, in terms of he's this Targaryen bastard who knew, and apparently knew he was a bastard, and chip on that, and now suddenly he's rising to prominence. So, we'll see with that. Their scenes were nice and well acted. Again, Corlys needs more scenes. I liked his scene with Alan at the beginning. The subtle acting of their awkwardness, if he wants to include him more. But look, are you acknowledging me or not? What's going on here? Good acting, but it turns out that shaving thing was really hard to do, in terms of, they said, planning this out's almost as hard as the technical stuff for the riot, in terms of they have to coordinate with a stunt double who they're shaving from behind, and the hands are actually a barber's hands, and just working out how to shave someone's head without really shaving their head was hard. Interesting, just look at the behind-the-scenes video. But then, of course, we get to Adam becomes the new rider of Sea Smoke. Some people questioned here and there, not that Adam gets him, but the specific plot mechanics the TV show went through. In the book, Adam just lines up with the other dragon seeds when they have tryouts, and he claims him. In this, they have Sea Smoke come to him. That's an invention of the TV show, I guess, because he smells like, well, presumably they said the last episode he's restless, because presumably Laenor died off-screen, and he's looking for a new rider. And look, why would a dragon seek out a rider? Well, I was okay with this because the books do establish that dragons have a homing instinct. They have this low-level psychic homing instinct to find their rider, like Drogon can find Daenerys in the middle of the Dothraki Sea when they're separated, and other things I'm not going to get into from Fire and Blood, that dragons can find their rider across miles of, and it's not from smell. It's too far away across bodies of water. They have a homing instinct. So, okay, he had a homing instinct for Adam because he smells like Laenor or something. I actually thought that worked out pretty well, that why not seek out a blood relative? Fine. And I'm happily surprised at how much audiences were excited by Adam getting sea smoke, that I feared that, well, from the post-episode interviews, because they make those in advance, like the same night interviews were all focused on the Rhaenyra Mysaria kiss, which again, split off separate video. Thankfully, if you look at like topics that are trending on Google Trends and just subsequent articles made in reaction to what were people Googling, now everyone was really excited about Adam claiming sea smoke at the end. So thank you for rescuing us from the kiss being the only talking point. But this is all just set up, of course. The full reveal of Adam got sea smoke will be next episode. But that was nice. It was most that and Stefan Darklin, and it's set up for the tryouts that are next episode. They were nice. They were short. Not the A-plot like they will be next episode, but I like those. That Rhaenyra was fine when she was doing that part of it. And I guess shifting from now we're looking at the commoner bastard sons, Adam and Alan, and we need to get Targaryen bastards who are commoners. I guess that loosely thematically ties to point 4 out of 6 here, the Smallfolk storyline with the food riot. That was great. There's not much more I can add to that other than that I really liked it. And this is an invented subplot. I mean, and it's borrowing a lot from the food riots in the second A Song of Ice and Fire novel, A Clash of Kings. But things that were cut from the TV show version, they reused for this riot. So I really like them. Like, you can tell they love the source material. That a man gets his arm cut off for touching a royal. That wasn't in the TV version of the food riots in Game of Thrones. That Sandor Clegane did that defending Sansa. She says that she's traumatized. She saw a man's arm got cut off right in front of her. That he was trying to grab her off her horse, so Sandor lopped it off and managed to pull her back. That the TV show changed it around a bit, but reworked that in. Also, in the book version of the riots, the Kingsguard Preston Greenfield got dragged down to the ground and killed by beating his head in with a cobblestone. They cut that from the TV show. They even mentioned Preston is still alive by season 4. You never see him. He's an off-screen character, but that they sort of reused that for Leon Estermont. That you see in the subtitles, it said it was Estermont, the one who cut the guy's arm off, then specifically got dragged down and they're beating him and killed. And that they reused Preston Greenfield's thing for Estermont there. That was pretty good. So I like that they're using things that were cut from the other riot, reworking them into this. And just in general, crowd scenes, from watching behind-the-scenes stuff, it is hard to film a riot scene, making sure no one actually gets hurt by accident. Arguably worse than like a battle scene where you have like ranks of soldiers and archers, where it's just a human crush from a crowd surge is hard to film safely and to choreograph, and they did a pretty good job of it. And there's like 180 people in the crowd, I think they said, and behind the scenes, again, if you haven't seen them, I'm trying to give you the short version, but I urge you to watch them. They're free on YouTube. Olivia Cook did all of her own stunt work on this. Like when Allison trips and falls at the bottom of the steps, I think that's how she got the cut on her arm, is it's from her fall. When she trips and falls at the bottom of the steps, that's actually Cook falling onto a mat that's off screen. And there's this whole thing, they put it on the social media, check it out, the 1-minute clip of explaining, Liv Cook says, "The guy who threw the rotten fish in my face was actually a former cricket player, so he threw it really, really hard." Then they had the cricket player guy saying, Liv was such a professional. we gave her the option of using a stunt double so I wouldn't be throwing it in her face directly and hurting her, but she insisted on doing her own stunt. Even though it hurt that she got hit really hard with this fish, and she said it spun her around completely in a couple of takes. But imagine, just rewatching it, the shot is really good, because they could use a closer shot of this is really Liv Cook getting hit. Like, if they used a stunt double, they've had to shift camera angles to behind your head, or shift it to a wide shot so you couldn't see it was a stunt double. No, that's really Liv Cook. She took one for the team, that I'm not going to use a stunt double, throw it in my face and hit me really hard with it, so they could get a better shot of it. So that was nice. One minor complaint I have is that Helena hasn't been used much since episode 2. She was great in the first 2 episodes, and she's had like a scene or 2 since. They didn't really add anything. And because, you know, in all fairness, she didn't do much in the book either at this point, that they said we wanted to keep her from going totally insane, and catatonic is in the book. Well, okay, is she going to do something with her? That this was more than she's done since episode 2, but I thought they'd be building up dialogue scenes, really heavy dialogue scenes with like her mother or something, but instead, while she doesn't talk a lot in this episode, Fia Saban still felt she did a lot. The actress, I love how happy she was in the behind-the-scenes video. She said, I never get to do action scenes at all. Even though, you know, it's an action scene, it's a chase, she's running away from a riot. But she was like, wow, I finally got to do some action-y stuff outside and running and things. And just visually it was very pretty. I mean, to the point that, like, them running, dashing from the crowd got used in trailers a lot. It was really good. Sophia Saban was happy with it, that she finally got to do something physical. And I did like Fia's performance in it, even if it wasn't a lot of dialogue. That Fia managed to convey Helena's overall body language very well in the riot. That point when everyone starts shouting and she covers her ears, that she has this awkward physical body language, that she covers her ears like she did when they start shouting. She covers her ears like she did when Vaemond was beheaded in the throne room in episode 8 of season 1. And as I pointed out at the time, that's good research, that a lot of people on the autistic spectrum are sensitive to unpleasant noises. So her reaction hearing the squishing noise of a man being beheaded is cover her ears. That this crowd surge shouting at her that she's covering her ears, the noise is really bothering her, that Fia remembered to keep doing that, and just her overall, how physically confused she'd be at this, because she's not someone who's even, you know, even just as a regular noblewoman, not used to what to do when you're being attacked like that. So that was good physical acting, but I'm hoping for more dialogue stuff from her in the next few episodes or something, because I wanted to preserve her from going insane in order to have more characterization, but whatever. But I really like the Smallfolk food riot stuff because it's entirely invented. And I praise these writers when they're able to make a good storyline when they don't even have source material. But just even before the riot, the lead up to the riot, just in terms of the dialogue, the pacing, with that scene at the tavern, it's called the Cock Inn, where you have Diana and Sylvie spreading rumors and gossip to rile people up, and Ulf the town barfly is getting worked up about it. And then we see, and the pacing, tight pacing, but they're quickly and succinctly conveying spread unrest and rumors among the small folk. And then we see Hugh's wife, Kat, last in line when the market runs out of meat, and then a cartload of sheep going by, and Ulf and everyone starts shouting at them. This was succinct, efficient storytelling. It worked really well. I said that the camera work didn't really stand out to me too much. It did in the Cock Inn scene, with Andrei Perek's directing, that he made good use of soft focus. Consider that for the human eye, everything in a room is in focus. For something to be out of focus, it would have to be like on the other side of a river or something. If you're in a room, everything is in focus, and early cameras couldn't do that well, so it was really big when Citizen Kane invented deep focus, popularized deep focus. Wow, I can see everything. But I've had other videos about this, about, like, I really liked how Handmaid's Tale used soft focus, that you can shift, there's this thing in an episode of Handmaid's Tale Season 1 where the other person is talking, but she's looking at a pair of gardening shears And you, without dialogue, without inner monologue, you can tell she's wondering if she should go for that as a weapon, because she's a prisoner. And normally in dialogue scenes, like a small council scene, you'll see the focus shift, the camera focus shift, so the person talking is in focus. Or maybe if it's Allison shooting a worried look at Aemond, she will shift into focus while the rest of it goes blurry. But rarely is it really prominent in this. It was pretty prominent in this because it's showing the whole room is listening in on Diana and Sylvie loudly gossiping. So even though they're the only two people talking for most of the scene, they're out of focus while the camera focus shifts to Ulf or the other people while they're blurry in the background. So that actually was good camera work in that scene. So credit where credit is due, that they don't use soft focus enough is something that really stands out, and it did in this episode. But just, it's great. I'm worried that tell me in the comments, did TV First viewers think that the Smallfolk stuff was a little slow up to this point because they didn't know what the payoff was? Like, I knew, because I read the books, I know Adam is going to get a dragon, that Ulf is also a dragon seed. They mention that, but I've seen enough reaction channels putting together, oh, I guess Ulf will try to get a dragon when they hold tryouts or something, that this guy is going somewhere. Or just, why are we spending so much time with, like, the Smallfolk, like a 2-minute scene of Hugh in episode 2 explaining, oh, the food prices have tripled already. Because it's leading to a food riot in episode 6, which, like, we saw in trailers. Even if you didn't read the books, you could tell they're building up to that riot scene we saw. So, I don't know if people saw this as slow, but I've seen reaction channels. I watched a lot of reaction things from TV-only people that, oh, people going, oh, this is where all that Smallfolk stuff was leading up to. It did have payoff. So I hope people look more fondly on, oh, it was so slowly paced in the episodes that are just showing the Smallfolk. It was build up for this. So I liked it all around, and I hope that people are appreciating it more. 0.5 out of 6. Daemon in Harrenhal was much better, and Alice Rivers was drastically improved. That to anyone who says the Harrenhal thing was slow or they didn't like it, it started in episode 3. So we have episodes 3, 4, 5, and 6. The only one I didn't like was the scenes in episode 5, which, like I said, I wouldn't cut, but they needed to be faster paced. They were brilliant in 3. Alice Rivers got her full introduction in episode 4, where she was, being really witchy with potions and dreams and stuff. And, oh, I'm a barn owl. That was great, but this was a return to form. And talk about this in the comments, that Alice Rivers was great and interesting again, like she was 2 episodes ago. Because episode 5, she was mostly a sounding board for Daemon, that she's just showing off. She's this mysterious witch in a half-ruined castle, and they even have an owl fly to her head. I loved it, just how unfazed and nonchalant she was. She lifts her arm, and it knows the command, so it comes. It's not that it's magic that you've trained the animal to do that, but it's just and here that she's unfazed by it and doesn't remark on it. But I love that line that's getting into the Alice Rivers is how they're working the magic angle back into this, whereas Game of Thrones took it out as much as possible to appeal to football players and soccer moms. Just that she's working in that whole thing, like episode 4 talking about, well, it was built out of they cut down all the weirwoods, which were imbued with the souls of those who came before. I love that line in this episode, the writing on this, that there are older things in this world than you or I or in living memory. You're not a player but a piece on the board, as am I for that matter. That's great stuff. So, Alice Rivers was great again, and because people were a little bored from the last episode, that was one episode's thing, that this was great. I wish they'd done a little more with Paddy Considine and Sean Brooke cameos. Like, we kept hearing Sean Brooke is coming back, Sean Brooke is coming back, and she came back to play her corpse in a dream. I would have done other things, but it was still nice to have them back so they can come to cast parties and things. And I understand that I thought it was subtle, but I loved it, that what disturbed him in his prior dreams were nightmares of things like cutting Rhaenyra's head off. Here, just the memory, realistic, it's a memory, it's not what didn't happen, it's the memory of Viserys denouncing him, just verbatim repeating what he actually said in real life, is haunting him. You think about it in terms of what haunts you the most when you have this crazy dream that didn't really happen, or when you're just vividly remembering a traumatic thing that really happened, that hurt him so much when Viserys denounced him, and that the guilt he felt that he was too flippant. Viserys saying, "I defended you, and you were faithful to that," and that haunts him, that he wishes he was there for Viserys when his wife died and he wasn't. That's character building and, character introspection and writing. And I've seen other channels like Voice of Old Town say, no, this is amazing, that we would, if we didn't have this, we complaining they glossed over Daemon's characterization. That instead they're actually having a psychological study of him is good in general principle. I hope we do a few more things with Paddy Considine in the next 2 episodes. Maybe they'll have another dream, I'm not sure, but nice to have him back. Oh, and personally, I loved how much Daemon was freaking out after he woke up. And just a trope, but it's a cliche for a reason of, like the Ebenezer Scrooge. Oh, what day is it? Well, oh, no, I walked all the way to the dining room. And just, I loved how a lot of this, with the great acting by Matt Smith, felt like a giant Shakespeare shout-out. Tell me if you were mouthing at the screen like I was, Daemon does murders sleep. Daemon shall sleep no more. Or when he's holding a little, fruit knife to the throat of Simon Strong, is this a dagger of the mind? Is this real, or am I hallucinating again? So he just did the Shakespeare shout-outs of all the weird sisters, and it's very Macbeth in this, which is good. Another thing, speaking of Alice Rivers improving since last episode, yes, this episode confirmed she is not a ghost. That, not so much in episode 4, because that's when they really introduced her for the first time, and okay, it's late at night. After episode 5, this rumor started, I guess it only lasted 1 week, but it was a prominent speculation of people going, are they playing up that she's a ghost? Or if she's real, that sometimes she appears to him, it's glamorous, that only he can see or something, that ghost, basically, that no one else at Harrenhal interacts with her or even acknowledges her. And I don't know if they meant that as a fake out or not. I think it was just subtle of, we don't talk about her, but no, there's 2 points in this episode where they do acknowledge she is real. And she couldn't be a ghost because she isn't in the book. They acknowledge she does things in the books which other people know she's there. That the 2 things are that Simon Strong outright says our healer Alice Rivers tried to help Grover Tully, but he died. So that pretty much confirms it. And then that Larys Strong to Aegon, I love that. Again, perfect scene. Without naming her directly, that's the better part. That without naming her directly, but the implication is obvious. I love it when they do that. That my foot was so twisted my father called it sorcery, a malign spell cast by a member of our household. I love it when they do that. They don't state it directly, but they trust that they trust the audience. This is so obvious. Put 2 and 2 together makes it more rewarding. That I don't need to spell it out. And generally they did. I've seen reaction videos going, oh, that was Alice Rivers. Also consider the subtle hint of that. An active member of their household at Harrenhal when Larys Strong was born. This subtle hint that Alice Rivers is a lot older than she appears. Because Larys's actor Matthew Needham was 39 when he filmed this, while Gail Rankin was 33. That she's 6 years younger than him, and yet the actress in terms of physical appearance, but Alice Rivers was old enough to be active at the time of his birth. Like, even if she was like a scullery-maid 15-year-old or something, bare minimum, she has to be in her 50s, pushing 60. And that's the thing in the books, they go, well, Mushroom claimed that she was a nurse to Lionel himself, and that's implausible, but then again, she did have to be, just in terms of, they say, oh, she was a wet nurse to Harwin and Larys. Wouldn't that mean she's at least 40? And she didn't look 40. She looked a lot younger, that they're starting to play that up. That's great. It was subtle the way they worked it in. Not everyone picked it up on that, but I noticed 1 or 2 channels going, wait, how old is Alice Rivers? Moving along, last we come to point 6 out of 7. Again, because I pushed point 7 out of 7 Rhaenyra Mysaria to a separate video. Point 6 is something I really didn't like. Just telling you right now, that Jane Arryn and the Vale scenes, that, not in terms of the sheep stealer stuff, that's a separate issue, just in terms of taking them as scenes, In episode 5, I liked the short first scene we got with Jane Aaron. It's always nice to meet new people, well acted. It was under 2 minutes, but the scripting was really tight and the performances are really good. And it quickly showed that Jane Aaron is in charge, but not unreasonable. That you send a dragon to defend the Eyrie from Vhagar. Instead, you sent this thing the size of a cat, 2 of them. But then says, well, it wasn't that it wasn't her idea. She was sent there. That I'm sorry, your grandmother died. Come to supper. So some people thought that was her being imperious. I thought, yeah, no, she cares. They kind of cheated her on this. Well, what are you going to do? We need the war-capable ones for the war. That scene I actually got stuff from, and it was short, but for 2 minutes it was good. This did not add anything to Jane now in episode 6. All she was doing was giving plot exposition about other things. That, okay, Pentos agreed to foster the younger sons, they're sending a ship, and yeah, we think a wild dragon is ranging around looking for sheep. In terms of Jane Aaron as Jane Aaron in her characterization and backstory, this adds nothing. She has a backstory in the book. They haven't even introduced that she's in a long-term relationship with another woman. And we don't even know if Jess Redford was cast for this season. I hope she's in the finale or something. And by comparison, I was similarly annoyed that they seem to have glossed over all of Kragan Stark's backstory. That he's a pretty developed character in the book, and he got exactly 1 scene. But I later said I'm willing not to dwell on that because we have reliable leaks that he's coming south with the Winter Wolves, that we'll see him at the Twins in the finale. And that, it's not that they cut these things, it's they wanted to space them out more through the series as a whole. So even if it's in season 3, we get Kragan giving his full backstory of, I had to fight my usurping uncle, I actually had a wife, she died, I have this infant son, I'm kind of lonely from that, my brother died, all these other things with Kragan. If that comes in season 3, I'm fine with that. I even hold out vague hopes we'll see Sarah Snow in the finale, you never know, as a tease for next season. But Jane Aaron, similarly, I'm okay with, if they just show, and here's Jess Redford, she'll be more of a character next season, I'm okay with that. I know there's limited screen time. Still, in terms of these episodes, you need to have the courage not, and I know they said, this is the Rhaenyra, Alicent, Daemon show, and I get that. But then again, it expanded into showing Jace, showing Aegon and Larys, and they said we're trying to at least keep it focused on the Targaryens. 1 or 2 of those slow scenes with, there was a slow Daemon scene in episode 5, then Daemon was good in episode 6. And whereas Rhaenyra was good with, Baela in episode 5, Rhaenyra's scenes were a bit slow in this one. You should have the courage to go, look, for all of 2 minutes, we can give a few more lines to Jane Aaron with a second scene instead of just 1 in every... She's only had 1 in the past 2 episodes. 1 in each. So I hope that it helps with pacing to expand out other characters, but this didn't really add anything to Jane Aaron's characterization. It didn't detract from it, it was just functional. And like I said, if you're going to yell about this in the comments, I'm of course living in dread that they've merged Rhaena and Nettles. I can't really say more than I already have, so I'm not going to add to it here, that since before we knew this might be coming, that, well, I will say episode 7 just got an advanced screening at San Diego Comic-Con a matter of hours ago. And reliable sources who were there have said, there's a lot of rumors, but reliable people who were there said, if Rhaena does claim Sheep Stealer, it's not going to be until episode 8. So that means we get another week before shit hits the fan. So I'm just going to table it and come back to it later. That people who were there said she's with the troop of people leaving to go to Gulltown, to go to the boat, on ship. But after sighting a trail of dragon droppings, she leaves, and this will lead her to Sheep Stealer. But that's what leaks already said. That's pretty much what the trailer shows, that you see her turning and looking at something in the Vale. I'm not sure if Sheep Stealer is even on screen in episode 7. I think he'll actually be... Remember when I showed that leaked storyboard that was labeled, we think, for episode 8? So whatever's going on with Rhaena and Sheepstealer won't happen until episode 8, not episode 7, is what we think is going on. And I will just reserve judgment until then. Because I still hold out some hope that there is still chance that it's a fake out, that Rhaena tries but fails to claim Sheepstealer, and it turns out she's being ridden by Nettles. That Rhaena will fall off of fall off of him, she'll turn around, and there'll be Nettles played by Thuso Mbedu, who, this South African actress who looks exactly like our artwork of Nettles, who showed up at the premiere without explanation. And I have a whole video on that, and at the end of that I also said, similarly, actress Hera Hilmar from Apple's C show, with the blind people in the post-apocalypse, she came to the premiere for no discernible reason, and I said, I hope she's Jess Redford, appearing in, like, one scene of episode 8 to set up season 3, but I hope we get, like, Jess Redford and Sarah Snow in episode 8, and while we're at it, that at the last minute they'll reveal, oh, it's actually Nettles, played by Thuso Mbedu in episode 8. But that's separate from this, that otherwise, while not bad, it was just exposition. It didn't really do anything for Jane Arryn, or even particularly Rhaena, just other than having knowing looks. In terms of her character and the back and forth and the acting, episode 5 did more for Rhaena than this did, even compared to that under 2-minute scene. And I'll leave it at the one saving grace for the Vale stuff in episode 6 for me, that just barely saved it from being outright bad, is that they finally showed Stormcloud on screen. He must have hatched between seasons 1 and 2, because they didn't include him in their count of dragons then, but he's just a hatchling. And they reused the template for hatchling Drogon from Game of Thrones season 2, but like the movement is improved, that they show him, rousing himself, shaking a little, being a little bored, moving around, that he's just like this big cat hanging around with little boys they play. That Stormcloud's a cutie, and he was trending over Twitter that there's all these, hooray, it's Stormcloud, look how cute he is, which is nice. So I was happy we at least got Stormcloud from these scenes, but otherwise, I'm looking forward to when they actually, even if it's only season 3, and even if they don't by the end of season 2, I'll hold out hope that, look, Jane Arryn and Cregan Stark are still alive. They'll probably just give their backstory next season. It's not as if they're using them up as characters, but I'd appreciate it more. So like I said, those are I made the top 7 things were, point 1, Alicent's episode. Point 2, other Green Council members also really good. Point 3, the Dragon Seed subplot, mostly with the Velaryons like Adam and Alan. Point 4, the Smallfolk subplot with the food riot, very good. Point 5, Daemon and Harrenhal with Alice Rivers, much improved, and you can tell, now that Grover Tully's dead, you get the sense of forward motion that pretty sure he's going to behead Willem Blackwood next episode for massacring people, and he told him not to use his war banner to get the Riverlords back on his side, judging from the trailer. And point 6, this Vale scene wasn't even as good as the last one, which was short but good, and this is even ignoring the Nettles Sheepstealer stuff, that I want to get characterization for these people. And even if she does claim Sheepstealer, they won't really have time to develop Rhaena as a character. It'll be setting up Rhaena in season 3, though I think Nettles is coming. That you have to, you have to believe that they're doing that we have so many other hints that they're doing that. We know Thuso Mbedu was at Leavesden Studios briefly for, enough time to film one scene. And I'm not going to give up. Even the man who has nothing can still have faith. Faith in Nettles is coming. Don't give up hope yet, while hope is not lost, while we are still alive, until the credits roll on episode 8 of this season, the season finale. I'm not giving up hope. And like I said, those are the top 6 things, because point 7 about Rhaenyra and Mysaria, for time reasons and my sanity, and for more focus, because I know this is long, I split that off into a whole separate video. So please follow the link right after the jump to the video specifically about the Rhaenyra and Mysaria stuff.